I'm talking about firing somebody, but I'm actually talking about how you do it kindly. And my message to folks who I work with is, as much as you're dreading this is the most important discussion you're having with this person. Even though you're exiting the organization, you have an opportunity to really help that person move forward in their career by explaining all the things that haven't worked well, but how we're going to support them. So I do
I think
most of.
what's wonderful about this story, right, is I asked you about kind leadership.
Yeah.
And most people, the way they think about it is how I tell you, good job, and I give you recognitions. And you're basically saying, no, I mean, kind leadership doesn't mean you don't lead, and it doesn't mean you don't have the tough conversations, right? And you took us directly to the tough conversation. Welcome to the Future of Less Work, where we're piecing together the transformation of work one puzzle piece at a time. I'm Nirit Cohen, and today we're diving into the transformative power of kind leadership with Ian Sandler, co-founder of Riley's Way and the managing director and chief operating officer of Insight Partners. Hey, Ian, thank you for joining me today.
Good morning. So nice to spend my Monday morning with you, and lovely to meet you.
Yeah, same here, same here. And, because I believe we co create the future of work, I always begin each episode with the same question. If the future of work is an unfinished puzzle, what's the piece you're working on?
Sure. For the last 10 years, I've been working with my wife, my family, and our leadership team honoring our daughter Riley and building out Riley's Way. Riley's Way is focused on empowering the next generation of kind leaders. The irony is, my job is, and always kind of has been, to be a COO and to lead large organizations. The work I've been doing at Riley's Way has actually been probably the best education I've had in terms of how I should lead. And I believe it truly is the future of where leadership is going. I believe that the young people that we work with are the future leaders of this planet. And our hope is that there's a new paradigm in which kind leadership and servant leadership finds its way into every profession and really gets modeled at the top of large organizations, governments, really anywhere that touches the world. I think this becomes even more interesting as you start to embed AI and where technology is going. I just happen to be really lucky in that my day job is very much in technology and where the future of really the world is going, where corporate life is going, but really where all our lives is going. And then I get to marry that with what I truly think young people are looking for in organizations, and what hopefully we think is going to adjust what, and not even from a political perspective, just the world is so polarized and divisive that there's a potential antidote.
So, Ian, you brought up the fact that you've got this dual hat thing going on, right? So at Insight Partners, you lead, teams in one of the most high pressure industries, private equity.
Hmm.
We don't often think of kind and leadership in the same sentence. How do you see that really coming together?
Yeah, listen, first of all, I think it's a little bit of a myth. I spend a lot of time talking to young people, and I think there's this perception that you make a choice. You can either like go and do something to help the world, or you can somewhat sell your soul and go into finance. I got to be honest, I've been in this space now for 25 years, and every organization dating back to my early days at Morgan Stanley, being a partner at the Carlyle Group, helping to run the largest hedge fund at Citadel, and now being here at Insight. Listen, being smart is table stakes for all these organizations, but really the people that rose to the top of those organizations, they had amazing emotional intelligence. They were wonderful leaders. At its core, people don't leave organizations, they leave managers.
Yeah.
And I think that's very much true in our world. These young, talented people who come into places like I just mentioned, they want to do more than just earn a paycheck. They want somebody who's going to invest in them, their career. They want to be brought into the room. And that model to me really is one of servant leadership. It's one where the best leaders don't think about how do I take people on my team and make myself better, but they're waking up every day and they're thinking about how do I make each member of my team better? In fact, as I've moved through organizations, there's this real interesting transformation where you realize that it's not what you're doing as an individual that gets you judged. It's really the team. And so buying the trust, getting folks to really believe that you're looking out for their best interests, that your organization and you as a manager, that you're really very much focused on who they are and where they want to go. That's how you get the best out of people.
So if you think about your journey and this both perspectives that you have, how do you see how you perceive the words we use in the corporate world, the team building and the aspects of the people in the leadership, which were always there, but how does your perspective of what we should be doing change when you come from the perspective of the young leaders who are looking at significant issues and have different expectations?
Yeah, I think it's really interesting. So the way we've set up Riley's Way is we're a youth-led organization, and that means really what it sounds like. We work with teens age 13 to 22. We put some of our leaders on our actual board. We ask them what we're going to do. We ask them what they want and they need, and so much of what they're looking for. And this is very much a byproduct of the our life on cell phones, then coming out of the pandemic. In fact, we hit our stride as a nonprofit really during the pandemic. And what they're looking for is community. They're looking for authenticity. They want to go work for an organization where it matters how they get paid. But if you actually look at Gen Z, they actually value the compensation lower than any generation that's come before. They want to go to a place they're proud to work for. They want to go to a place that actually has ideas on how they're going to make their community better. They want to know how they'll have time to do the things that provide them with purpose, how they're going to be able to marry that with their vocation. And so I think it's a really interesting opportunity for folks like myself who get to run large organizations to realize, hey, there's some very creative things you can do to really create those cultural ties and to make this a place where amazing young people not just want to come and start their career, but they want to become part of it, build their own parts of their own identity within the organization, and to really grow up through it. That's what we're looking for. When you hire great people, it's much easier and much better for your organization to give them room to run and to develop than it is to lose them after 2 or 3 or 4 years and have to replace them.
So Ian, I listen to you, and I think because I've been researching the future of work for a lot of years, and one of the things we're seeing is a lot of these expectations are evolving expectations even beyond young people, right? I mean, we see a lot of the workforce today put other things before pay. And, to a degree, they're basically saying, they want autonomy. They want to work for something that matters. They want to be respected. They want to have a meaningful work and life experience. So that's great. But then it hits the ground and we get what feels like a conflict between leaders saying, we want you back in the office. We don't know how to build culture this way. We don't know, we have a business to run. We have our shareholders. So I'm trying to figure out what you've learned from this journey, right?
Sure.
That can help leaders understand how to do the win-win portion, which we're looking for.
Sure. Listen, the pandemic was a tricky time for everybody. I truly empathize with young people who were disconnected, and how challenging that was. I actually think there's it makes sense to both say, hey, we need you in the office, because that's how you build culture. And almost every business is an apprenticeship business. So we've told our young people, we've told our organization, we need to be together. In fact, some of the mistakes, if we made them, were very much driven by the fact that we were all apart from one another. We weren't able to have that natural, healthy debate that truly thrives, certainly thrives at Insight. But we also hear that our organization is looking for different things. And so we've made a bunch of adjustments where we've both said, hey, we need you in the office 4 days a week. But we also recognize that for our business, summer can be a little slower. So we've implemented nomad months. So August is a
Oh, how
nomad month.
cool.
You work. You can tie some of your vacation into it. But given some of the enjoyment that particularly young people had during the pandemic, where they set up shop in Park City or we're over in Europe, we say, listen, you guys are able to go do your job from Portugal, but you need to work New York hours, and you need to work with your manager and your team to make sure that that happens. This is one of the most amazing perks we've provided for people. We've actually found that our summertime people are more, not less productive, because they care so much that this is a perk we're going to continue. And
Yeah, I love
so,
that. I love that story. It's one of these things where people get too much tied to number of days in the office, or, titles like hybrid, or, remote work. And you're basically saying, okay, let's figure out something that works for us and creates the win-win between what the people want and what the organization needs to
exactly,
deliver. Okay,
exactly.
that's fabulous. Let's get back to kind leadership. Please define that for me more concretely. What is at the core of how you see it, and how is it different than the other ways we describe, people-oriented leaders?
Yeah, listen, I think it comes down to, we were talking a little bit more about emotional intelligence. So we're really talking about, how can you take the time to see another person? How can you take the time to actually authentically understand who your team looks like? It doesn't mean things like just being nice to people, right? There's a difference between nice and being kind. So I I model this behavior with my team, where I come in and say, like, if you have to have the most challenging thing you have to probably do as a manager is, if the relationship isn't working, the person isn't being productive, and you actually get to the point where the best thing for the organization and actually the person you're talking to is to figure out how they move on to the next thing. And I've worked with folks on my team, and I've said, listen, this is the most important leadership opportunity you're going to have, is actually, how can you connect with somebody and have what's probably the most difficult discussion that person's going to have all year or more. And that comes from sitting down. First of all, you have to layer feedback throughout the process. And so that's at the core of kind leadership, is actually understanding, hey, it's a two-way street. I need to understand where you want to go. And in return, I need you to understand what the goals are for us, for the organization. And if you get to the point where you have to tell the person, this isn't going to work, you have to show up for that person. You have to put yourself into that person's shoes. I think that's a lot of what kind leadership is. It's leading with empathy. And so you're able to actually say, okay, I'm sitting down with this young man, and he's been getting feedback. It's not working. How is he going to approach this conversation? And so I think it starts by kind of saying, this isn't working. We've gotten to this point. Here's what the roadmap's going to look like. And for us, what we tell people is, step one is just go take a couple of weeks and clear your head. And then we give them an incredibly long runway where, really, to the outside world, nothing's changed. But we've gone to that individual and we've said, you now have your primary job is to figure out what is the next thing for you in your career. We're going to keep the circle of folks who actually know about this, the smallest group of people possible. And that allows, again, you're basically saying you're being fired, but you're not. You're doing it in a manner where you're truly saying this isn't working, and we're going to work with you to figure out the next stage in your journey. And this to me is both an example of my owners, the people at Insight, the way for 30 years they think about how they want folks in this organization to be treated. But it's as much the work I've done with my leadership team, which is now up to 10 people at Riley's Way, and all the young people we deal with. And it's marrying those two worlds. And so, again, I'm talking about firing somebody, but I'm actually talking about how you do it kindly. And my message to folks who I work with is, as much as you're dreading this, this is the most important discussion you're having with this person. Even though you're exiting the organization, you have an opportunity to really help that person move forward in their career by explaining all the things that haven't worked well, but how we're going to support them. So I
I
do
think
most of.
what's wonderful about this story, right, is I asked you about kind leadership.
Yeah.
And most people, the way they think about it is how I tell you, good job, and I give you recognitions. And you're basically saying, no, I mean, kind leadership doesn't mean you don't lead, and it doesn't mean you don't have the tough conversations, right? And you took us directly to the tough conversation. And I think it's always that part where we really think about the leaders that um, an imprint on us, right? And they didn't just tell us how great we were. In fact, they pushed us out of a comfort zone, and they forced us to do things we didn't want, and they, gave us good, strong feedback that built us. So it's really, really interesting. And I do want to take this opportunity because I believe what we're doing here is co-creating a lot of the future. I actually want to invite our listeners to share moments of kind leadership, their experience, with us on the platform, and comments in the episode, and we'll choose, one or two unique of stories and share them later on. So I think this idea that we need leaders need to lead, and they need the success of the organization. That also means doing the hard stuff, but there's a way, right?
Yes,
That's what you're bringing forth here.
very much so. And it really starts, like I was talking about, it starts by thinking about the team or the community as opposed to the individual. And that's really a big part of what we're pushing here is this whole idea. If you can build the trust of your team that says, I've got you, and that means, as a leader, that means I go in and I'm like, anything that goes wrong, it's on me. It's my job as the leader. Anything that goes right, I'm going to bring you into the room, and I'm going to highlight the work that you did. And I always joke, I'm like, I don't do anything. I just connect smart people, bring them together. Like, I don't have any original idea. And I'm totally fine with that, because what you really want to do is, as a leader, you want to build the confidence in your team or your community that they truly can succeed. They can do anything. And that comes from setting, not just it's setting up a room, it's setting up a place where folks truly feel like they can bring themselves to work. They can be seen, they can be heard. And that, to me, I wasn't leading this way 10, 15 years ago. I think
I
maybe
was
I
actually going to
expected it.
ask you about that because
Yeah.
I'm listening to you and I think, well, we talk about psychological safety forever, and we talk about,
Yeah.
empathy and how are you leading differently today? What is it that's different than?
It's totally differently now. It helps. I've had part of this comes from privilege, right? Like, I've had a very successful career in finance, and I had a fork in a road after I left Citadel, where we had just started, where after Riley had passed, and we were building out Riley's Way, and I could have just said, all right, like, my life's work is building Riley's Way, and let me spend all my time there. Or I could do kind of what I've always done, which is recognize what my talent is. And my talent is, I put talented people together, and I figure out processes, and I come up with ideas. And I'm so let me go and try to find another opportunity, and that turned out to be the CEO at Insight Partners, and then build out a leadership team at Riley's Way. So when I walked into Insight, I said to folks, listen, I'm working to build this, and I'm going to tell you all things, and you may not like what I say. And if you don't think I'm the right person at any point, tap me on the shoulder, because I'm doing it for this. But the wonderful journey that's happened is, first of all, when I joined Insight, my owners really cared not just about what my technical skills were, but I think they looked and they said, well, this is somebody who is going to be able to take the values we truly care about. And that is really to look after all these organizations are. We're just a collection of people with processes and tools, some moats, but for things like what we do, they're people organizations. And so they cared very much about how I thought about those things. And then I
So
was
you're
able to do.
basically also saying that the part where you had this other hat on, right? You had Riley's Way, wasn't a hindrance. It was actually something you brought with you. It's part of who you are, right? It's not, it's
It's
separate.
very much part of who I am, and it's become more and more as we've grown and thrived as a nonprofit. I was never going to come into here and apologize for spending my Thursday or my Friday like going down to Emory University and talking to students, or going to the University of Michigan and building out our first Riley's Way chapter on a college campus. They love this because these are places where we recruit. And the joke is that the people that truly thrive at places like Insight are the young change makers that we're focused on at Riley's Way. These are incredibly smart people, but these are all young change makers who run social impact organizations, and from a young age have decided they're going to really do something with their lives. That they're not going to look and say, how do I make myself better? But they're looking and saying, how do I make my community better? And so I've had this amazing opportunity where I spend my time with my partners at Insight. I do this work with my leadership team at Riley's Way. And I wake up and I'm like, how do I be non-reactive? How do I think about what's going on? How do I think about every discussion I have, whether it's with an LP, whether it's with a member of my team? And how do I think about what they want to get out of the discussion? And part of what I always talk to people is like, when you're meeting with somebody or you're networking with somebody, stop thinking about what you can get out of it. Think about this. Oh, I'm meeting with Nirit. Like, how do I make this a great discussion for her? What are things she's going to care about? And if I can go into the room and make this a wonderful, like, okay, great. Like, I actually got something from this guy, Ian. And like, this is what I was looking for. Then you can make it a productive conversation and you can actually think about how it becomes a win-win. But if you just go through life thinking about every meeting you're having and how do I make it a good one for that other person? Where are they coming from? How are they thinking? That really changed the narrative. And so
I think if people listen to you, Ian, what's interesting, I think you're in this, right? So I'm not even sure you notice, right?
yeah,
But we have historically had this culture in the corporate world where if you have more time, please spend it here. We basically own all of your time because we're paying your salary, right? Anything you're doing somewhere else, it would be really great if you didn't do it, because if you do it here, we get something out of it. And you're basically describing a story where you're saying, I have my own world out there that's supposedly not directly linked to what we call work, right? It's my passion. I care about it, but ultimately, I'm one person, and I bring work to where I go, and then I bring Riley's Way to where I work, and it makes everyone better, including makes you committed on all fronts, right? Which I think is a fabulous story for everybody to be listening for.
and the loyalty that I have to Insight is totally driven by the fact for the last 9 years, they've been not supportive isn't even the word. I don't think Riley's Way becomes what Riley's Way is if I'm not able to both have this seat here and have the opportunities, both financially, but really also to practice my skill set and to marry it with with the work I do. And you're right, like, I don't, again, from a true point of privilege, I don't feel like I work. I mean, I have tougher days and easier days, and we're in December and we're dealing with all sorts of year end stuff, and it's tricky times. But um, my leadership team and the young people we work with, they're the best teachers, right? That's the joke, which I always talk to people about when I encourage folks to find things that give them purpose, find things outside of their core skill set or their core vocation. Because what you end up realizing is when you know what you're working for, you're not working. You have tough conversations. You have days where you're like, oof, like this one's challenging. But at the end of the day, you know what you're doing everything for, and you kind of flow through life. It's really it's
Yeah.
listen, it's
Yeah.
been a true gift to me.
Yeah, and I think for those of you not seeing this on video, I mean, you just look at Ian and he's basically, all there. But and I think you're also saying one more thing. You're also saying, first of all, if you're working for something that matters, it doesn't feel like work. But you're also saying the fact that you have something that takes you out of that regular day-to-day interaction with the regular people that you interact with on the regular stuff that we call, work or profession or job, right? That gives you perspective, and it teaches you a lot, and it feeds right in. And I'm almost tempted to ask you a question I wasn't planning on, but I wonder if you could think of what your managers or your partners, right, would say that they get as a benefit from the fact that you also lead Riley's way.
Yeah, I think they would say, I take good care of at my for my owners. I think I'm a good steward for the culture that they started from the beginning. That's what we are. Um, and I think they would say, this guy is okay with people, and that kind of matters to us.
Yeah, and you basically tell us, I learned a lot of this from experiences that are not management classes. There's something else.
100%.
They're interactions of all sorts that are different from the regular world.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Wonderful. So, Ian, as we wrap up, I want to turn the tables and ask you, instead of for an answer, I want a question. So I
Mm.
do believe, like I've said, that we're co-creating something here, because whatever worked in the past isn't necessarily going to work. And we talked a lot about the way leadership maybe needs to transform a little more, and how we think of that interaction between what people care about and who they are and how they bring themselves to work. So I'm wondering, what is the question you think we should be asking about the future of work?
Yeah, listen, I think that it's a good one. I think we should be asking, what are the skills, tools that folks are going to need in a world where there's no longer a career ladder, where a lot of what people started their careers doing are going to get automated, and what's truly going to be valued. Now, I'm going to talk my own book a little bit. So I went to the University of Michigan. I was a general studies major. Luckily, my late father was from South Africa. And when I told him I didn't want to do B school and wanted to get a general studies degree, instead of most folks who would have been like, well, what are you going to do with that? He's like, that's great, boy. And so I went to law school and built out a career, and fell in love with technology. In a world, and so I get to see all these different things at play, and I'm talking my book a little bit, but I truly think that what the future, what we're going to have to ask is, in a world where ChatGPT and agents can take pieces of information from different places and provide it there, right? So a lot of the core accounting, finance, legal, whatever core functions are, what you would start honing your career on, all of a sudden that becomes automated. Okay, well, what are you going to look for in people? And I think what you're going to look for is what humans do really, really well. And what we're able to do is take, all these different areas of ideas and put them together to come up with new concepts. And then people who are able to navigate situations where you have a diverse set of people at your organization, and who's going to have the emotional intelligence to understand how to enter an organization how to thrive and help different people in different aspects and thread those things together. Now, I'm also describing like my journey, so like it's not lost on me, but I think in a world of AI, both liberal arts and emotional intelligence are going to be areas where the human brain truly excels. And it's going to be harder and harder for machines to operate in that way. And so, to me, the core question in the future is, and it's coming so much faster than people realize, it truly is. So, in a world where a lot of this stuff gets automated and what you're looking for in young people is going to be different than just an IQ test. What are the skills you're going to look for? And I truly believe that the answer to that question, again, talking my book, is you're going to look for young change makers who've shown that they are able to showcase kind leadership, servant leadership, how do they give back to their community, how they can do things both inside an office and out in the real world that are going to truly create impact that only humans can.
Wow, thank you, Ian. That's really inspiring, and I love it, and I talk about the fact that we really need to be hiring people not for what they do or did, right, but what they can do, which is so much more than the narrow boxes of the past. This has been really, really interesting. And for more about Ian Sandler and Riley's Way, check out the links in the podcast description. You can also learn about the Call for Kindness Fellowship and other initiatives at rileysway.org. If you've enjoyed today's conversation, don't forget to follow The Future of Less Work wherever you get your podcasts. And like I said, you're invited to comment on kind leaders that have touched you, and we can share those. And that's thank you for joining us on The Future of Less Work, where we're piecing together the ever-changing puzzle of work. Remember, the new social contract is a win-win between people and organizations. Your best people work not because they have to, not because you tell them to, not because you measure them on it. They work because they want to, because working for you is their way of achieving their purpose in life. Until next time, keep asking those questions and we'll build the future of work one piece at a time. Thank you very much. Thanks for joining me.